What's going on, everybody? It's your boy Tirado. Welcome back to the Next Level Fear Show. I want to shed some light on the New York Post today. Wrote an article on the settlement that the city had agreed to disperse amongst, I don't know, what is it, 13 million? I got the article right up in front of me. And I'm going to go ahead and just get right into it and just read what the article pretty much says. And I'm sure some of you may have read it already, but if not, this is what it says. New York City has agreed to pay more than $13 million or nearly $10,000 each to demonstrators who were arrested or beaten by cops during the 2020 Black Lives Matter protest over the killings of George Floyd. We all remember that. It was crazy out in New York City. It was crazy everywhere. And so, you know, the first thing that comes to my mind is, I wonder how many of those individuals, the 1,300 or approximately 1,300 people who are going to receive $10,000 actually live in New York City. That's like the first thing that just came to my mind, you know? It'd be kind of weird if over half of these people lived out in Minnesota, you know? Wild. That would be insane. So it goes on to say that the proposed class action law settlement, which still needs to be approved by a judge, would be one of the most expensive payouts awarded in connection with the mass arrest lawsuit in history. Experts, you know, according to experts. Yet one of the highest payouts, but obviously not the highest payouts. There's been way higher payouts. Abner Louima, I think, was probably the highest. Those of you who don't know who that is, you might want to Google that scenario. That was a nightmare. So the agreement filed in Manhattan federal court on Wednesday would award most of the approximately 1,300 plaintiffs who were arrested or subjected to force by police about $10,000 each, according to their attorneys. The lawsuit filed against the city, then by then Mayor Bill de Blasio and Commissioner Shea, as well as other police officials and officers, argued that thousands of New Yorkers who exercised their constitutional rights were corralled into places where they could not escape during the widespread demonstrations. Well, I remember from what was going on social media, all the videos and stuff. I mean, they were setting things on fire. I remember them breaking into stores and looting, and it was just a nightmare everywhere. Damn near every city was going nuts. Okay. I don't see how. I'm going to get into this, by the way. I'm going to get into, you know, this whole, you know, police department culture and how this has been happening for decades and nothing has changed. It's just getting worse and worse and worse. But let me just finish here. It says here, plaintiffs marching against racially targeted police brutality were allegedly physically restrained and put in dangerously close quarters, all in the height of the global COVID-19 pandemic. Lawyers said arguing the same tactics were not used during similarly sized protests of different issues, according to the complaint. Yeah, that's because no one was burning police vehicles and breaking into stores and looting, and they weren't doing that. This was an entirely different type of protest. This was just chaos. All right. They were setting everything on fire. All right. Let's not pretend like that didn't happen. I don't think I have to read any more, because all this is really going to talk about how the police were kind of corralling them and trying to arrest them. They didn't stop them from leaving, although they were telling them to disperse the area. And it was a chaotic situation. I don't see how the city could have done a better job than what they did. I don't see how. I mean, it was just mayhem. There's not enough police officers in New York City to be able to control this sort of riot, this type of behavior. There isn't. And the type of police officers, that are on the street today, I don't personally believe that they're capable of handling this sort of thing. Okay. There were more police officers hurt probably than any other demonstration in New York City ever before. So when you look at the video, we could take a look at this video real quick.
Of over 6,000 videos showing how New York City police mistreated protesters. All during the Black Lives Matter rallies of 2020. Lawyers and investigators analyzed hours of footage to expose the NYPD's use of force. Now, the city has agreed on a record sum of $13 million to settle a class action lawsuit.
Stop it! Stop! Let's go! Get on the side!
The question is, what did you expect them to do when there was looting? When police department vehicles were being flipped over, they were blasting fireworks at them, assaulting them. They were assaulting each other, assaulting civilians on the street. I mean, what did you expect the police department to do? I mean, how did you expect for them to, gain some sort of order in the city when things were just going nuts? I don't see how, like I said, I don't see how they couldn't have done it any other way, honestly. This is just chaos. We saw it. I hate to even look at it, but...
We met with one of the lead attorneys to break down what the team found.
You saw that scene where they show one of the supervisors with the white shirt, and he had his nightstick out and he hit the dude in the back. Something in the shoulder or maybe in the back. The guy just turned around and looked at him like, what are you doing? You know what I mean? Like, honestly, this is, I'm gonna let this play for a little bit more. And
the NYPD tactics were extremely similar and repeated. And we broke it down into the lawsuit into several major groups. One big issue is excessive force.
Sir, what's your name? Oh!
We saw officers tackling people to the cement.
I'm injured! Yo, stop resisting, I'm gonna punch you right in your face. Relax.
We saw officers kicking, punching, including punches to the face. And specifically, we saw a lot of improper use of police baton.
Okay, I had enough. I can't listen to this lady. Here's my take. Speaking from experience, okay? Here's my take on any situation that may occur when it involves police using force. So, how do police officers get better? How can they refrain from having to maybe use their mace or a taser or a nightstick? How can they avoid using these tools that the city gives them to use against people who are resisting arrest or trying to attack them? How do you prevent that from happening? Because no matter how justified a police officer is, the minute he removes that nightstick and he swings it at somebody, I think the general consensus is that that's viewed as it being excessive force. No matter if the police officer is getting his ass handed to him, even if he's losing the fight, in the eyes of the public sees that and says, that's abuse of force. He's using a weapon to hit this guy. That's unfair. Because in most cases, you're going to have an individual who's refusing to be arrested, he's going to use his hands. He's probably going to overpower the police officer somehow. Maybe he's going to outbox him, out wrestle him. And the police officer is then going to have no other choice but to either use his mace. If that doesn't work, take out the baton. If that doesn't work, unfortunately, they go for the gun. And that's when it just becomes a disaster. And so what is my take on this whole scenario? Because giving $13 million to 1,300 people is not going to solve 100 people is not going to solve anything. What is it going to solve? I mean, it's only going to further divide the people who live in New York City. I don't know when was the last time you were in New York City, but last time I was there, you just have this feeling in the air that it's just real thick. There's a lot of tension in the air in New York City. It's like you can't even look at somebody the wrong way because somebody they just want to go berserk. And when you look at the police, even when they're driving in their vehicle, they don't even want to look at you. It's like they got their horse blinders on and they're just driving to their destination, and that is it. They're not trying to be proactive at all, and I don't blame them. But the question is, how do we stop this from happening? How do we stop lawsuits like this from happening? How do we take back the streets where police are respected again? Because I'm telling you right now, all right, so you're going to give these individuals, disperse $10,000 to 13,000 people or whatever, 1,300 people. And they're just going to do it again because there's going to be another George Floyd. It's going to happen again. It's inevitable. So what do? What I think is, instead of investing this money into the community and all these polite programs that they have, how about we invest that money into better police training? Because the current training that's been happening, the training that I received as a young police officer back in the 90s, the early 90s, was horrible. I'm going to tell you that right now. It was horrible. The training that police officers receive is you're not even touching the surface of how to defend yourself. Because when I was a rookie police officer, when it came time for us to box each other to see what it felt like to be punched in the face, we couldn't hit the other person too hard because we didn't want the other person to get hurt and then possibly drop out of the academy. So we didn't go hard. We weren't training, wrestling, doing any sort of MMA. We weren't doing that. All the arm bars and the wrist locks that they taught us, all that shit, the speed cuffing, they taught us that for a couple of weeks, and then that was it. They blessed us and said, go out there and do God's work. Even throughout my career, the only times we were mandated to qualify with our weapons, right, with our firearms, was twice a year. That was it. That was the only required qualifications that we had to keep up with, was twice a year. And the type of shooting that we did was horrible. Horrible. No running and shooting, it was nothing like that. The only guys who got the extensive training in combat is if you was in an elite unit and you went to receive that training, like ESU or something, emergency services unit, guys that were detectives that were doing their own search warrants back in the day. We went and we did it. It's, if you weren't practicing on your own, you were doing yourself an injustice. I'm not even going to tell you the amount of people that would fail, that would literally fail and have to be seated when they went back to their respective commands because they didn't qualify with their firearm. I'm just talking about the gun scenario. I'm not even talking about anything that has to do with weight. The amount of obese police officers that are out there, it's insane. And yet they want us to be held to this, higher standard. But they don't want to invest in proper training. And so why not invest? My thing is this. Why not invest and make it mandatory for police officers who are on the street, the beat cops, guys who wear the uniform, drive around in the blue and white cars? Why not make these guys, make it mandatory for them to be a certain weight, make it mandatory that they attend an MMA sort of class 3 times a week, make it mandatory that they achieve a certain level of whatever, belt, green belt, blue belt, whatever it is in jiu-jitsu. Because all the fights, as you can see in the video, end up on the floor. Make it mandatory that they box, that they know how to box. Make it mandatory that these individuals are proficient in arm bars. There's nothing like being confident in your ability to be able to defend yourself with your bare hands. There's nothing like it. Your confidence is on another level. You look at MMA fighters. MMA fighters are not out here bullying people. These guys are measured, man. If someone is getting aggravated or wants to bait them into a fight, these guys don't want to fight these people. They just look at them and laugh. I mean, unless you physically touch them. If you physically touch them, and then it's a different story. But they have so much confidence in their ability that they're looking at the individual saying, all right, man, whatever you say, man. Just don't come into this comfort zone right here. But whatever you say. Now imagine if you had that same confidence as a police officer, graduating out of the academy at the age of 21 years old. You got all this pressure on you. All this pressure. You have the right to take someone's freedom away. You even have the right to take someone's life away, if it's warranted. But you're graduating out of the police academy and you have absolutely no defensive skills whatsoever. None. Why is it that we're not investing in these police officers, or why is it that we're not making it mandatory to create machines? If they're going to be out in the public, making arrests and on a daily basis, and these individuals are meeting sometimes the worst of the worst, dealing with the public every single day, then you have to be highly trained with combat. Because a police officer is not going to use his baton. They're not going to go for the mace. If a guy is resisting arrest and a police officer is extremely proficient in hand-to-hand combat, it's only going to take one man to be able to subdue that individual. And just take a look at this scenario for a second. We've seen countless videos, right? Where you have an individual who doesn't want to be arrested. He's flailing his arms, right? Police officer saying, stop resisting, stop resisting. What does the police officer do? Take out mace. He starts macing him. That doesn't work. It doesn't work on the criminal, but it works on him. Now he's gasping for air. Police officer's choking, looking like a freaking idiot. It's embarrassing. Then he takes out his baton and he starts wailing, and the baton is doing absolutely nothing to the individual. Okay? Eventually they roll to the floor, and then the criminal somehow gets the better of him, takes advantage, takes his gun, and winds up shooting him with it. Or maybe the gun that he had in his waistband, he pulls it out and he gets to let off a few rounds. But the minute that police officer, because there were other videos where that police officer gets up and he takes out his baton and he starts wailing on this individual. You see, the sentiment of the public when they see that, no matter if the police officer is getting his butt whipped, they automatically see that and say, well, now that's brutality. Now that's excessive force because you're not using your hands. You're not using your hands the way the criminal is using his hands. It should be a hand-to-hand combat thing. Why do you have to use the baton? That's the thinking of the public. But if you have a highly trained law enforcement officer, highly trained, okay, in jiu-jitsu, MMA, boxing, all combined in one, where he can take out this individual in a blink of an eye, hyperextend the elbow, break the wrist, dislocate the knee, and never have to go through his mace, never have to go and retrieve his baton, and for sure never have to pull out his firearm. Do you know the respect that people would start to have for police officers who are out in the street? Imagine that. No one would want it. No one. You might have that rare occasion where a guy is on drugs or whatever and he's lost his mind and he wants to tussle with the police officer, but the police officer is going to be able to handle himself. Why? Because he is mandated to be trained, to be highly trained. Make that part of their occupation. At the end of the day, when a police officer is highly trained, he's going to make better decisions. The way we are training the recruits and the police officers that exist today, you're just setting them up to fail. I don't know. I don't remember ever being confident in my ability when I graduated the police academy. I had to join a boxing gym to gain confidence. And most police officers are not doing that. I can tell you that right now. I had to be in the gym day in, day out to build that confidence. But it's not mandatory. Because if you make it mandatory and someone can't do it, right away they're gonna sue you. They're gonna sue the police department, equal rights, blah, blah, blah. This is why it's all gone to shit. You know how many times as a supervisor I would respond to a scene or something like that, and I would see the police officers, either guarding the body or whatever, someone just got shot or whatever, and I'm looking at their nails, women, I'm talking about women, and their nails are, what seems like 2 inches long. In my mind, I'm like, how am I holding a gun? How are you holding your firearm? How are you doing it? How are you and I going to respond to a family dispute and you're going to protect me? What are you going to do other than be in my damn way? You got to see the shit. It's insane. Invest in your police officers so that way situations like this don't happen. And I'm not just talking about the riots, because the riots, you just can't prevent it. There's nothing anybody can do. Nothing. People, if they're going to go ham, you do what you can at the end of the day to subdue whoever you can subdue. And if it means that you got to manhandle somebody, then so be it. But this article right here and these lawyers, they're not telling you the truth. They're not telling you the truth. All they're doing is taking bits and pieces of videos to support their narrative. That's all. And the city of New York said, you know what? We're not dealing with this. We'll just pay you out and that's it. Call it a day. Unfair. It's unfair. Anyway, I'm going to leave that here. And I don't know. I'd love to know your thoughts. Leave it in the comments. If you think I'm onto something, let me know. If not, if you think it's highly unlikely which I agree with you. I think it is highly unlikely that the city would invest in their police officers, but that's something that they should do. And that's just one aspect of how big city police departments should change the course of how they train their police officers to make them better, to make these people better, more confident, functioning machines. Anyway, with that being said, guys, I'll see you on the next one, people.